Hey, I'm back, and so I'm on work again. So it's Thursday, June 13th, and so start of another day. So I wanted to talk about, yesterday I was talking to some ladies, and I mentioned something about myself, and they said they didn't. One of them that knows me a little bit more than the others said that they had no idea. And so sometimes I automatically assume that, not guess, that I've told people this. But anyway, I was in the military. And joined in the 80s. I was in my 20s. Had no desire to do it right out of high school. I wanted to go to college. I went to college, dropped out of college, and after working like several part-time jobs, dead-end job, one of my friends went in, and I was like, hey, why don't you do that too? So I went into, I initially wanted to go into the Air Force. I wasn't prepared because you have to take, well, at that time, I'm not sure if you still do that, you take the ASVAB test, and that gives them an idea of what MOS, military occupational specialty, what job you might be suited for, what your, I guess, I don't know if IQ is the correct terminology to use. They get an idea of what you might be suited for. So I was suited for it. Now that I think back on some of the jobs that I was suited for. Okay, I'm getting ready to make a turn. I don't know why I get quiet every time I get ready to make a turn. But now I think back on some of the jobs that I was suited for. I was like, maybe I should have chose this one. What I wound up doing was, they called it, was it at that time, I think it was 36 Charlie. It was wire systems installer. We installed tactical telephone wires for telephones, tactical cable for any other kind of communication, because at that time, that was the 80s now. I'm ready to change lanes. That was the 80s, so, you know, we didn't have what we have now. So, yeah. And so I did that, went through basic training, went for AIT, which at that time, I can't remember what it stood for, but you train for your job, and that was my job. They called it 36 Charlie. I think they changed it since then. It probably changed the title. Probably a lot of things have probably changed in the military. Yeah, I joined, and that's something that I don't regret, even though it didn't pan out. My goal was to do a full 20 years, retire, you know, but I didn't. I came in not desiring and not having no idea that I was going to get married. Someone told me, this young guy that I used to babysit, you know, he found out and he said, you're going to get married. I think at that time he was he in the Navy? I think he was in the Navy or getting ready to go into the Navy or wanted to go into the Navy. And he said, I'm telling you, you're going to get married. And I was just like, I don't think so. And lo and behold, after, was I in the military? Yeah, I went through training, and then my first duty station, that's where I met my ex-husband, and got married, and 2 years later, had a son, my oldest son, and then 3 years later, had my youngest son. And so after I had my oldest son, I was still in the military. And mind you, that, well, I said we ran tactical cable and wire, so, you know, we were in like a war type setting. That was our training, I guess you could say. They used to call it going to the field. And yeah, So we would stay out there 30 days at a time, or even longer. And so, yeah, when I got pregnant, I couldn't go to the field. There were certain things, that was another thing. There were certain things that pregnant women weren't supposed to do. You hardly ever saw any pregnant women exercising. Now you see them doing all kinds of things, and maybe I'm wrong. Give me some of you who are, you don't have to be military to answer this. Like in the 80s, was it okay for a pregnant woman to exercise? It might be minimal, like walk, and that's it. But I was doing sit-ups, and I wasn't trying to, kill myself or anything like that. But yeah, I was just doing some things. But anyway, I think because of stress, because there were so many pregnant women in our company, and it seems like we all were due around the same time. And everybody was so concerned and consumed with what we could do and what we couldn't do. And so that's another thing I'd like to talk about, is perception, because a lot of times people perceive what you're doing, and I'm getting ready to make a turn. People perceive what you're doing, and they get an idea of what you're doing. They think, oh, I see so-and-so sitting at that desk, and he or she always looks like they're chilling, they ain't doing nothing. You don't know what that person is going through, trying to perform that task. They may be they may look like they're chilling. Some people, they're very laid back, and on the outside, but in the inside, they may be like tripping out. But anyway, going into the military is something that I don't regret. Yeah. And so I was thinking back of something that I was talking about, but I didn't finish saying, was that, about the job, and there was so much stress, and I wound up having my son, he was premature. And so when I think back on the history, my mom said that I was premature. So, okay, I don't know if that's hereditary or not, but, and I think about my son's, his character and his personality. I should, hey, I should have known. My mom says, little babies, and children, they show you who you are early on. So, we just have to take note of it. And so, my son is, he's very impulsive at times. I think now that he's gotten older, I think that he kind of thinks things through. But yeah. So yeah. I don't regret going into the military. I met some really cool people. And there are a select few that I still keep in contact with. Some old neighbors. So after I got out, I began working for the Department of Defense. So by that time, I was married, so I was a military spouse. So when you are trying to get employment on post, at that time, it's probably still that way. You get the spouses get kind of preferential treatment. Plus, I had some years in the military, so hey. But anyway, so I wound up working for the Department of Defense and wound up getting, I think, was it retirement status or something? Or almost, I had like 10 years. It was, I can't remember what the status was termed or called. But when I got finished, when I left there and came here to Georgia, that was my goal, to try to get back with the Department of Defense and the government in some type of area, which didn't work out. I was divorced from a military member, so So I, wind up just working outside of the military. So being in that environment, I got comfortable, and because I had been in it